Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. Obviously, Warzone Season 3 ended up changing the meta around a decent bit. We had some long-range changes, some close-range changes, also the addition of a couple of new weapons. And so today, I wanted to go through the entire Season 3 meta update, break down the changes, and of course, reorder everything that we've got when it comes to the general meta with our tier list that features every single weapon in the game. So first and foremost, as mentioned, we've got some new weapons now live in game in the form of the Moors Sniper and the FJX Horus. Now, the Horus as an SMG is a little bit weak, unfortunately. It's not going to be anything too crazy. It does have really good movement speed, but ultimately its damage is going to be a little bit lacking. I will say it's probably going to be more of a competitive SMG than anything else. Its magazine capacity is kind of troubling with its fire rate being a bit faster. It's borderline for sure, but as of now, I'd say it's probably more so competitive, close to the rival, maybe some of the MW2 subs versus top options that we already know of, like the HMR9, for instance. Now, the Moors, it's a one-shot sniper. To me, that makes it pretty obviously right there with the Stalker and the Cat in terms of its ability to be an absolute meta weapon within its, own play space and own range. And what's cool about the Moors is it can be a one-shot in a variety of different ways. If you want to go for an aggressive setup, it can one-shot headshot within its initial damage range. If you want to go for a slow, long-range sniper setup, using the charged barrel and upping the ammo to like the slug or whatever, the explosive, can also one-shot over crazy long distances too. So it's a nice balance between the Cat and the Stalker where it can kind of do the best of both worlds. Now, we also saw a bunch of different weapon updates and different buffs and nerfs and whatnot, and I've got them all listed down over here on my handy dandy notebook or Word document. So if you see me looking over here, that's why. But now let's go through and take a look at all these weapon changes and how they affect the overall meta rankings here. So first up, the Ram 7 got its close damage and its mid damage nerfed. It also got a max range nerf as well, so its first damage range is going to be a little bit shorter now, and a head multiplier and neck multiplier nerf as well. So the Ram across the board now becomes a little bit worse. Over long range, it was already kind of a pea shooter. It wasn't doing crazy damage by any means. Its real, area where it thrived the most was the close to mid range, and that is significantly worse now, but it's still going to be in line with the BP50, some of the MW2 subs that are actually capable of competing. And so for that reason, I'm not going to knock it down into competitive. It's still one of the better rifles, but it's not going to be the only viable option anymore, which is good. Now, the DG56, it's listed as the 58 because that's what it was initially called in game, but the DG56 got a sprint to fire nerf. That's not going to be a drastic change. It's still a competitive burst rifle. This is a bit of an interesting one. The Lockman 556 actually got a max damage buff, so that's its close range damage getting buffed, and a near to mid damage buff alongside a neck, upper torso, and then arm and hand multiplier buff as well. So the TTK on the Lockman 556 is going to be looking better. However, this is a rifle that is really meant to be mid to long range based, not so much close to mid range. So with that said, that's a change that doesn't really bring this out of competitive, despite it being a lot better for maybe some resurgence style gameplay. It's still lacking where a lot of these other rifles are going to thrive over, 30, 40, 50, 60 meters. But it's nice to see that it is on the, climb up a little bit rather than just being kind of obsolete. Now, right alongside that, the M13C actually got a max range buff, but quite frankly, this is one that really is right there with the Chimera and the FR Avancer in terms of a viable sniper support with a decently fast TTK in the close to mid range. That was probably a bit of an overdue bump up into the more top tier area. I know you're looking at this and saying MW2 guns in top tier, but statistically speaking, they can hold their own relatively well as sniper support and some mid-range rifles. Also nice to see the Avancer got even better with arm and hands multiplier buffs, so that's now even more efficient. You love to see that. Also, the Razorback, it ended up getting a max damage buff, then also an arm and hands multiplier buff as well, so that becomes a little bit more competitive. And quite frankly, I could see this being in the top tier area as well, just mixing it in with the Avancer, with the M13C, the Chimera. You pick and choose any of these if you're looking for MW2 sniper support, and all of these actually would work really efficiently. Now, the Bass B kind of got some strange updates here. On the Outlaw 277 kit, they nerfed the damage but buffed the speed of it, so that's kind of strange. But then on the actual base Bass B, the normal battle rifle, they ended up nerfing the rate of fire and the recoil recentering. So it's going to be a little bit more awkward, and with that, I think it does end up dropping down into more of the competitive category here. Like the Sidewinder is an option that I might be taking over it now in terms of TTK and general usability and viability there. Interesting changes for sure. Also a bit of a bummer, the MTZ-762, we saw this nerfed back in season 2, and they actually nerfed it more with its close and its mid damage receiving nerfs with season 3, so that becomes even more difficult to do well with. It still has a decently fast TTK, but now it's worse than it was before, and it's got super limited ammo, so that's just not a great combination. Now, the SOA Subverter did see some changes, although they weren't ones that are super impactful, I would say. They nerfed its max range by a couple of meters, which isn't a huge deal for its close range, but then they nerfed the Sprint-to-Fire and the ADS. Now, they weren't great to begin with. It was kind of a slow battle rifle, but its damage is still absolutely crazy. It's one of the best TTK options in the game, so it's still absolute meta. It's just a little bit slower now, so that's not really a huge deal for a rifle based around mid to long range gameplay. Now, I mentioned the Sidewinder. They did end up buffing its Sprint-to-Fire speeds and its velocity, so it becomes even better. It's still a bit awkward to use with that fire rate, so I think that does limit it from being anything higher than competitive, but it's a good TTK option. Now, a lot of the SMGs ended up getting updates here. Most of them aren't going to have huge impacts on gameplay. Some of them, though, are very important, like the Ram 9. It got a close damage nerf and a Sprint-to-Fire nerf. That, to me, brings this into the top tier category and out of the absolute meta area. Its Sprint-to-Fire, not great already, and lowering that damage some does bring it back. Alongside that, the AMR9 got a lot of nerfs here. Its max damage, so it's close range, and its minimum damage, so it's long range, each got nerfed across the board. That's pretty huge because that's really where it thrived and made it way more, advantageous than other subs. They also nerfed its max range and its Sprint-to-Fire even more. So again, it's a decent SMG for sure, and especially a sniper support still, but it's a nerf that's going to be drastically noticeable when you're comparing it to something like the HMR9, which only ended up getting a Sprint-to-Fire nerf, and you can still build it to be crazy fast. So this is absolutely the #1 SMG, and I'm not quite sure why they didn't nerf this along with the AMR9 and Ram 9. That should have been a thing. By the way, as we are going through everything today, if you enjoy the video, if you find it helpful at all, do me a favor and drop a like on it. And if you are new to the channel or you simply have not subscribed yet, let's change that, because every single day I got you covered with all things going on in COD. News, updates, meta breakdowns. It's all right here, so feel free to hit that subscribe button and turn on those post notifications. Now, a lot of these other SMG nerfs aren't going to be too impactful. The Rival 9, for instance, pretty lacking in damage, but it actually got a Sprint-to-Fire nerf. That's a bit of a bummer. The base Striker got a Sprint-to-Fire nerf. The Striker 9 got a Sprint-to-Fire nerf, but a max range buff, which is nice to see because the Striker is going to be a little bit better now actually because of that. The Wasp 9 ended up getting a Sprint-to-Fire nerf, and the Swarm ended up getting a Sprint-to-Fire nerf. That's not going to have a huge impact on these. You can still build them out to be very fast. It's just, in general, the SMG category is a little bit less aggressive now. Now, the MX9 probably has deserved a bump up into competitive for some time, but it actually is better now. They buffed the near to mid damage and its close range damage as well. It's going to have an even faster TTK, and it's already pretty quick. Problem is here is that you've got no ammo. 32 rounds does not cut it outside of solos, so that's a bit of a bummer there, but it's still a decent SMG. Now, the Lockman sub, the MP5, also got a max damage and a max range buff, but it's not going to be too drastic there. It's better, but it's not an MW3 SMG. It's TTK, despite what some clickbait videos might be telling you, is not crazy broken or anything like that. The MP5 is not really all that close to being back. It's still got a little ways to go, but it's getting better. The Bass P also got a max damage buff. That's nice to see, but again, its TTK is nothing to write home about. Now, the Bruin, according to the patch notes, was supposed to get a long-range damage nerf, but then also an ADS speed buff. As we've talked about recently, and as I'm recording this right now, this change doesn't seem to be live in-game, but if it were, it would affect the Bruin's long-range capabilities and bring it more in line with a lot of these other LMGs, like the Holger, the DG. Really great options over the long range. The Bruin will just be a tad bit worse than those now. Still a very easy to use LMG and very versatile at the same time, but it's definitely not my clear #1 winner for the LMG category, let's say. This is nice. The Eradicator ended up getting a close range damage buff, so if you are using like an iron sight, more aggressive build, that'll be more effective, but that's not like its primary use, so kind of a strange update there. Hey everyone, briefly wanted to shout out my friends over at Gamer Advantage. Of course, Gamer Advantage is no stranger here on the channel. I'm rocking my Horizon frames in every single face cam video here on the channel because truly they are game changers. I sleep better because of them. My eye strain's not as bad when I'm wearing them, and honestly, even on days where I'm not just gaming, gaming, I'm editing, I'm doing other side work, when I'm looking at screens for long periods of time, these are by far the most important part of my day-to-day setup. So if you are looking at screens all day long, you're doing work, you're doing school, you're gaming, do yourself a favor, pick up a pair of Gamer Advantage glasses. They got a little bit of something for everyone. Plenty of different frame options in different colorways. They also offer support for any type of prescription lenses you may need. And if you throw in code WhosImmortal at checkout, you'll get a pretty nice discount. Link for that will be down in the description below. Now, the Evolver ended up getting a sprint of fire and an ADS speed nerf. Not a huge deal on an LMG that you're not building to be crazy aggressive. So you just play it for mid to long range, you're not going to really notice that all that much. Now, I'm a little surprised by this, but the wrap ended up getting buffed, and we just talked about the wrap a couple of days ago because it's actually one of the new fastest TTK LMGs in the game, and they made that TTK even faster by buffing the neck, torso, arm, and hand multipliers. So yeah, this is now a top tier LMG option for sure. Don't sleep on the wrap. Now, the HCR is another one where, as I'm recording this, the changes don't seem to be fully live according to true game data, but supposed to be seeing a max damage buff, arm, hand, and leg multiplier buffs as well across the board with that. It's still going to be a decent LMG competitive, but nothing in terms of, you know, being able to fully compete with some of these top tier options. And then the RAL, for whatever reason, they're like, nah, the slow LMG, it's too fast. We got to nerf this. Sprint to fire and ADS nerfs to the RAL as well. Not going to be super noticeable, but kind of weird that they're slowing it down even more. Now, previously, the Tempest Torrent probably could have been more in the competitive, maybe even close to the top tier category with its pretty crazy TTK, but they did drastically nerf its close damage or its max damage here, so it's not going to be nearly as viable anymore, which is a bit of a bummer. Also pretty limited on ammo. Now, for whatever reason, they did actually end up nerfing the Stalker's ADS speed, which really gives more power to the Moors, but it's still a one-shot sniper within its aggressive damage range and its effective damage range, which can be anywhere from like 50 to 80 meters, which is still very good, so it's staying in absolute meta. Now, the KV inhibitor, they also nerfed the ADS speed. I'm not sure why, but they did. It's not going to be a huge drastic difference in that though. And then this one, I really don't get. They're kind of just bullying the SPX at this point. Not many people are using this, and they've nerfed the sprint to fire and the ADS again. This is like the third nerf to the SPX in a row when no one was using it to begin with. So this is becoming almost borderline below average or like garbage, I would say. Now, the Renetti, it's nice that this got buffed because I was already going to talk about this, but the max range for it got buffed. And as you'll recall, a couple of weeks back, they also buffed the conversion kit damage. Now, at that time, I made a video talking about how the Renetti's TTK is absolutely crazy. It's just a pistol. And with the conversion kit, it's not super fast. A lot of the SMGs can be a lot more aggressive and have a close TTK to it. Also, some better ranges in some case, like just with how you're going to approach gunfights in terms of control and whatnot. It's kind of awkward being a pistol, but its TTK is very, very crazy right now, and I'd say it's absolutely up here in the top tier category for the time being. I don't fully expect it to stay this way, and it being a natural secondary, I think is going to deter some people to begin with, but in terms of damage output, the Renetti is going crazy. Then also the Akimbo Stinger, the rate of fire got buffed, so that's cool if you're just spraying and praying. Not super practical though. But that being said, that's generally how our meta plays out here in season 3. Some questionable changes to the close range meta that I feel like kind of monopolize it some, with the HMR9 being the obvious go-to choice, and then maybe with the Renetti mixed in there. The long range meta is feeling a little bit better. It's a lot more competitive within the rifle category now. The Subverter though is still going crazy. I think there are some obvious standouts, but for the most part, a generally healthy top tier and competitive meta here across the board for pretty much all ranges and all weapon classes. That is going to do it for this one though. If you enjoyed the video, do me a favor and drop a like on it. And if you're new here, be sure to hit that subscribe button on your way out. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day. I'll catch you later. Peace out.